Education is the bedrock of a society, as it remains the driving force and catalyst for transformation. A critical stage of the education sector in any nation is the high school level, or what is often referred to as secondary education. This is the formative stage for the students as they are exposed to rigorous class exercises, assignments, tests, and practical in maths, English, the sciences, social studies, geography, home economics, and physical education. It will be recalled that in the past 3 decades, government or public secondary schools in Nigeria turned out top performers in the West African Education Council examinations. It is a different story today, as Nigeria has for the past 3 years been on a steady decline in the WAEC performance, while the public schools are in a dilapidated state. The issue of a clear-cut policy for education in Nigeria has been lacking, even when the 6334 policy of former Education Minister, late Professor Aliyu Babatunde Fafuna, was reviewed by the present administration.
Coming into operation of private schools even emanated from the fact that the public school was nothing to write home about. After the period of years that you have mentioned, precisely about 2 decades ago. And what you witness is that right from that time up to the present moment, the private school establishment has always been on the increase. Simply because there has never been any change in the organization and then the running of the the public schools. More so that even amongst the private schools, you equally have competition. Though we have some private schools that you cannot really reckon with, especially the unapproved ones, because even the environment in which they operate is nothing to write home about. But the fact that government has no better alternative, I believe that is why those ones are even thriving. Because ordinarily, if the public school is better than those ones, I see no reason why somebody will still take his or her word to those schools that are unapproved, even in spite of the condition in which we know they are operating, which is not even conducive for learning. But for people to still patronize them, it means that they don't have anything better to even get from the public sector. So that's why they still enjoy patronage. And that spells out the level of decadence in the public school education. If those kind of schools that we are talking about can still enjoy patronage from people, it speaks volumes of the level of decadence in the public schools.
Even the teachers in the public secondary schools are not fully qualified and trained, leading to a massive patronage of private schools by parents.
I think if I actually get a baby, maybe one of these days, like I have a baby and I stay in this area, definitely it has to be Alpha schools, you understand? Like Alpha, the primary school, the secondary school, everything generally, you understand? Top-notch school, school that you can actually say, okay, yeah, I know this. I can actually say, yeah, my daughter or my son is actually attending a school that can. You understand what I mean? When it comes to the sport aspect, the social aspect, the education, look at the cowbell competition, look at every one of them, the school is Alpha Nursery Primary School, an Alpha group of schools. One of the best, definitely.
And the way and manner the teaching profession is being handled is not even helping matters. If the teaching profession is being handled as a professional, course as it should be, just like we have the accounting profession, which is being controlled by ICANN, and then we have the banking profession, which is being controlled by the AIB and other professions like that. We have a regulatory body, not this Teachers Registration Council. I think what they are merely doing is just to register teachers, not really hammering on the ethics of the profession. because somebody who will be teaching must have what it takes to be a teacher.
How can Nigeria get back on track with a sound education policy that uplifts the level and standard of secondary education?
Government does not have a policy which is properly implemented as far as the education is concerned. The way and manner they go about dancing forth and back brings about confusion even in the education sector. For instance, the issue of the system of education, which they term to be 6334. But we discovered that along the line, in an attempt to probably improve on the implementation, they came up with what we call the basic education again. And in the process, people got confused, thinking that when you say the 9-year basic education, they tend to see it as something that is supposed to be co-opted by the primary education. That as if the 9 years is meant to be the primary level, and then the remaining 3 years, which is meant for the SS, is for the secondary proper. And that even led to the problem of some primary schools which were just running primary school before, had to jump into starting a secondary school in an attempt to bring the 3 years of the early part of the secondary school to merge it with the 6 years that they are supposed to be running, making up the 9 years. So the forth and back running of this education policy brings about confusion. If government says that, I think the bottom line of even the new development is that the primary 6, which was formerly the minimum education required by every citizen, is no longer holding. The new thing is that the minimum qualification is the JSS 3 certificate. Simple. Instead of talking about 9 years basic education, and which stampeded the schools running primary before, having to bring in secondary schools of the junior category by fire brigade approach. And when you look at some of these schools, they just run them haphazardly, not really ready for full-fledged secondary schools. What the government was supposed to do then was to maintain the status, but just to make a pronouncement on the minimum basic education, basic certificate of education, which is the JSS 3. But now even you see some primary schools, what they talk about is no longer primary 1, the labeling of the classes is no longer primary 1, primary 2, primary 3. They label it basic 1, basic 2, which is of no basis. Even the foreign missions in our country, they're even getting confused. They always make reference back to the National Education Research Development Council, asking what do they operate? Is it basic, they call their primary schools, or is still primary schools? And they have to embark on enlightenment campaign all over again, trying to explain that the primary schools are still running primary and they are still classified as primary schools, while the other 3 years attached to the basic education, to complete the basic education, making the 9 years, is still the junior secondary school. So even the way and manner the policy is being implemented brings about confusion in the educational sector, and at the end of the day, they make mess of the whole thing.
If the current Obama administration is driving the policy of race to the top to bring competitiveness and improve learning and education in the public schools in America, the Nigerian government can revive the lost glory of the public secondary schools with a sound and clear initiative.
The advent of this vocational skill, that is introduction of the vocational skills into the curriculum, is a welcome idea. It's a good one, and which, if properly implemented, that's a condition. If properly implemented, it means that at the end of the day, even at the end of the basic education, we expect that at least a students who have graduated from the junior secondary with the basic certificate of education should be able to do something in terms of the skills acquired from these vocational subjects, and then be able to do something on their own, like the computer studies. They can embark on computer operations and computer appreciation, set up a business center, just to run typesetting and stuff like that. Even with that certificate at that level, they can still be self-employed.